afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for responding. My name is Tyoyila. I work with InterSwitch. InterSwitch is Headline's sponsor for the Nigeria Fintech Forum. I want to thank the organizers for having me and, of course, the moderator. I manage the financial services business in what we call the InterSwitch Sistigra business, which is a digital infrastructure and managed services business. To just simplify it, we're the technology part of InterSwitch. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so my first set of questions will go to Toby and Tolu. I mean, being the startups amongst this group, there's a lot of activity in the Nigerian regulatory environment. I mean, as a lawyer, I can say in my personal experience, almost on a weekly basis, there's either one law from CBN, regulation, guideline, exposure drafts, from SEC, from NITDA, seeking to regulate generally the tech ecosystem. How do your businesses receive these regulations or potential law? How would you say that these regulations are?
Now, this conversation around regulation, it's very interesting. My sense is that it's good to have regulation, even though, of course, there are considerations around its stifling innovation. The moderator started on a good note by saying that the fintech world revolves around innovators, investors, and regulators. So innovators who are fintechs are really quick to get things into the market, but sometimes there's this challenge, as it were, and I think the earlier panelist, Yinka from Sterling, spoke about over-regulation. So that might be a challenge, sometimes. But I think we've come a long way in the payments industry. In the early days, for instance, there was a lack of clarity as to where fintechs play, in the ecosystem. Where when regulation comes out, you're trying to interpret it because regulators like the central bank, the NFIU, NCC would speak to deposit money banks, would speak to microfinance banks, mortgage banks, BDCs, but look for the fintech element in it. I think that's changed in recent times with the new updated BOFIA Act that also includes PSP. So regulation is a good thing. I think what's critical in summarizing is finding the right line, as it were, between regulation that is not stiffening innovation, not stiffening investment as well. Thank you. So how do we take a lead in engaging regulators? We do that in many ways. We have over 2 decades of experience, dealing with regulators. We've been in this industry, for over 20 years, building out the first ATM payment network in Nigeria. Our approach to regulation and to regulators is that it's important that we collaborate. One of the recurring themes of this session is partnerships and collaboration, which is so important. And when you look at the fact that regulators, operators, interestingly, investors as well, are all stakeholders in this ecosystem, this is our industry. Because it's our industry, it's important that we work in a harmonious way to grow it. I think in the earlier session, they spoke about the fact that the pie is quite larger than a whole lot of us think. So how do we engage on behalf of the industry? We have a viewpoint that we do business in a live and let's live manner. So a lot of our products and services are such that yes, we understand that we have competition, but we are enablers of our competition in many fronts. And that's the same way also from, our conversations with regulators. Of course, we have channels with our various regulators, whether it's NCC, the central bank, the NFIU. But according to the regulation, it's actually a compliance function, to engage with regulators. So we have a very strong compliance team that helps us engage day to day with regulators. Once we get insights from the regulators around drafts frameworks, like the recent open banking framework that was released by the central bank, what we do in many cases is to work with a lot of our partners, a lot of you in the room here, to socialize, some of those ideas that regulators are bringing forth and get your inputs, gather them, in addition to ours, to share them with regulators. Thank you. Of course, recognizing the contributions of the Fintech Association of Nigeria, I'm thinking that the same way, in the banking industry, you have the Bankers Committee, you also have the Association of Chief Compliance Officers that help create a channel with the central bank. I'm thinking that with the fintech industry as well, that might help, to create a common understanding, around some of the challenges we face and a united front before the regulators. I know the Fintech Association does that, but from a regulatory standpoint, engaging with the central bank is actually a compliance matter, within organizations. So maybe an association like that might help around, managing over-regulation, if I may call it that, help also strengthen the compliance functions within fintechs. Thank you. Yeah, so I think everything that has been said is welcome. This bill is a welcome development. It creates a bridge, of course, for startups and regulatory bodies. A lot of what we've been talking about today, has been around more conversations, with regulators. I think also the point around the tax incentive, which was spoken about, is also welcome. The seed fund as well that startups can access, especially women. Not for me.
It's just one word to wrap up this conversation. Our veteran in the house.
Thank you so much. So regulation is a good thing. We must emphasize this. We need to keep talking and talking and talking with the regulators.